Hello and welcome to the Development Design Digest. Today we're talking gender. Little can be done if half your population is not consulted, respected, and involved. And for that, we have Transform Rural India's TRI gender lead, Seema Bhaskaran, to tell us all about the work that she's been doing in this field. Seema, first I want to talk about your own journey and how you got here. How does somebody from Kerala come up to work in Delhi with different parts of the government and also going out to outreach in the villages in central India?
Hi, Lindy. So it's a very interesting question to begin with. Gender and intersectionality impressed me right in my childhood when I saw that women from the manual scavenging communities, now presently called as Safai Saathis, were cleaning up the streets, and their children were hardly sent to schools. I have also experienced very bitter kind of scenes where women who were actually cleaning up the streets were being bitten by stray dogs, but never being accessing any kind of services of the health like immunization. I mean, getting themselves vaccinated after or injected after the dog bite. And I mean that this kind of an intersectionality which I saw in my childhood had gravely impacted me. Like, we from belonging to a middle class families could access to schools or hospitals and get all the basic services, but the communities which I saw in the streets were not able to access any of these services. My first impressions of gender were that. Then also belonging to a matrilineal community with land rights and inheritance rights, but we still could see that there were lot of violence within the families and disparity in between the men and the women. So this was some of the starting or initial points of reflections and analysis in my personal life. But that was emotional, and of course there were internalization of gender aspects. But the difference happened, or the difference in thinking happened only after I went into academic disciplining through my education in Tata Institute of Social Sciences. And after that, I've been working only on gender and social inclusion, mostly with the government. And I feel that working with the system enables you to work at scale, and also that the impact is very visible. Though with respect to gender, work is mostly process oriented. It doesn't lead to any kind of outputs or outcomes like you would get in agriculture or in infrastructure building, or all those aspects which are very tangible. So when it comes to gender, the outcomes it's being more process oriented would take a longer time, and would not be as tangible as other areas of work. But the impact is always felt at scale when you work with the government and the systems.
Well, I really like that because I feel that sometimes in a noisy democracy, everything can be very short term. We can look at, well, what's the impact now? What will it be in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? But you're telling me you have to set that aside when you're working in gender, that it can take a long time before these things, this mindset changes and real impact is seen. It's also interesting that you talk about working at scale, which is something I know is very big for TRI. They pilot programs, but there's no good trying to change one village, is there? Tell me about the work that TRI does trying to make things test in one area. They call them community action labs, and then they bring it to scale if it's a successful pilot, that is.
Yeah, so what you correctly pointed out, like in the community action labs, which are like immersion sites, some of the work is experimented, and most of these are innovations. So one, if you look at the Mahila Lakpati program, which is today being scaled up across the country through National Livelihood Mission, it may have started in very few blocks of the country, and then it's gone on scale. Similarly, we had this experiment with Nari Adhikar Kendra, which only started in few blocks, like 8 blocks of MP, which is like one-stop solution for entitlement access and actualization of entitlement access, linkages with livelihoods, and also working on gender intentional issues. So it is kind of a innovative practice which has been developed, and this basically is done through something called the cluster level federation, which is a third tier institution,
Right.
of SHGs and its federations. And later on, this was found to be very effective, and then it was upscaled to around 200 blocks of Madhya Pradesh. And presently, we are also upscaling the same, like, to 851 blocks of Uttar
Wow.
Pradesh,
Wow.
which has been approved principally, and the work is just starting.
So considering one block has so many villages, that is a lot of villages and a lot of lives that are being changed by one pilot program. I believe there's also part of design thinking is trying to look at things from a bird's eye view, right? Going to the end user, figuring out what they need, but more importantly, maybe what they want, and then trying to look at a whole of society approach. Is that right? Is that something that you find is different with TRI's approach to development?
Yeah, usually, sometimes programs are conceived in a very fragmented manner. So we, when we design programs in a very fragmented manner, we'll be definitely touching and changing the lives of a few communities, but maybe it's only like touching one aspect of their lives. Whereas, so what happens is that you may work on livelihoods, but then the human development indices of the sex ratio in between men and women, or between girl and boy children, or human indexes in terms of literacy and education, skill development, control over body and fertility, reproductive health, education of children, child marriages or age at marriage, and also decision making with respect to spacing and family planning practices, or even economic participation in the public forum. And all this may not automatically happen if it is not designed with care. And so then you would see that, like, presently we are the fifth super economic power. India is like recognized as a fifth super economic power, but when it comes to gender equality, we are still much behind many other countries. We are like 132 in the global gender gap index. So we are out of 160 countries, so we are much behind. So there is a need to also with complementarity work on gender issues along with economic development.
I mean, what was fascinating, I was trying to keep count of all the things you rattled off, that it's fine if you can help a woman with her livelihood, but if you don't help her with all these other areas, then that one band-aid is not going to be enough, is it? Can you give us an example of how this plays out, how this plays out in real terms that you've seen in your work?
Yeah, so we find that, for example, like TRI supports National Rural Livelihood Mission in the Mahila Lakpati program. Now, if you just work on seeing that women are economically empowered through the Mahila Lakpati program, and this happens basically through SHGs and its federations, and also linkages with livelihood bodies like the farmers producer organizations or producer groups and producer enterprises, where women are brought into these bodies, but then the focus is basically on enhancement of income,
Right.
and not on, if it is not on quality of life, then what happens is that they may not be able to take decisions over anything they do. So we see that presently, even if you take up agriculture, present situation in India is that 84% of women are into agriculture, and men are all migrating into secondary or tertiary kind of occupations into the cities, and women are doing all the backbreaking work or the kind of drudgery which is there in agriculture. But when it comes to being a farmer, they're still not recognized, because they would not have Kisan credit cards in their names, since they don't have land titles.
Even though they're doing all the work.
So they don't have land ownership as of now, and it's only 11% in India that women have land ownership. So it's so poor, and as a result of which there is hardly any decision making on how much of land to be brought under cultivation, what are the kind of crops to be grown, where is it to be marketed, what is to be done with the income, and how can the income be used for homes, the household purposes, or for the betterment of their lives. So there is no say or decision making when it comes to household. So it is very important that we work on all these aspects along with livelihoods, to see that women, the agency of, especially the individual agency of women is enhanced, and the collective agency of women is also enhanced, like the collective decision making in terms of being able to go to panchayats, being able to visit various public institutions in the society. So like our work on the Nari Adhikar Kendra is one of the examples, like where women, uh, we have been trying to provide gender training so that they are able to take decisions within their household with respect to their education, skill, employment, and also they are able to take decisions when they go out to public institutions, like for example to the gram panchayat, to raise their voices about what they would like to have, their aspirations, their needs, and feel confident to raise their voices in the public institutions. So this is part of their
So
work.
if I understand you correctly, you can come in and try and help and really spend time and effort helping someone, a woman in particular, get a livelihood and get income. But it's we can pat ourselves on the back for that, but actually there's so many other facets of her life that we need to work on or help her with in order to stop intergenerational poverty. And as you said, one of those is building capacity, building up her confidence, training her in how to not just do the job that you've helped enable her to get, but actually speak up and be part of the government as well. And is that where gender sort of intersects with governance?
Yeah, so like there is a huge thrust on getting the women. So after women coming into these SHGs and federations, and also trying to develop employability, and also working on livelihoods, the other step is also to be able to raise their voices in the governance processes. Now, as part of the 73rd, 74th Amendment in India, decentralization and the mandate to participate in the Grama Sabha is fundamental right of every citizen. So it's very important. I mean, women were never participating in the Grama Sabhas. The whole focus has also been to see that women not only individually but collectively participate in the Grama Sabha, and also through the village poverty resilience plan raise their demands on various aspects like entitlements and public goods and services, infrastructure development, social development, and all these aspects. They raise their voices through the village poverty resilience plan, and this that gets it gets integrated into the gram panchayat development planning processes.
But if we're to believe the numbers show that there are lots of women signed up for these things.
Yeah.
Is that not the reality on the ground?
Yeah. Now, because there is a lot of effort which is taken for developing these VPRPs and getting it integrated into GPDP, a lot of women are participating.
But I thought part of the problem was that sometimes the numbers seem to indicate that things are going well, but actually the reality on the ground is they don't attend any meetings, they don't do anything, their voice isn't really heard.
No, that is not the case, because participation is there, but when it comes to political decision making, the political domain is still dominated by men, because it's not so easy to change patriarchal values. Here we see that there is a intersection of both the gender and the caste class playing out together. Because we see that men dominate over these areas, especially in the political domain, because policy making is often considered as a forte for men and forte of the patriarchy, because the money and decisions lie there. And so we also as part of TRI's efforts we are trying to develop something called the gender sensitive panchayats. This is actually providing technical support to Ministry of Panchayati Raj, where we are trying to work systematically to change that kind of a proxy leadership of women, and to see that they are able to raise their voices in the political domain also, which is completely dominated by men presently.
And when you say technical support, what does that really mean ones and zeros, or does that mean on the ground support?
Yeah, it means both, because we have developed a strategy for it.
Okay.
And we are working in a very systematic manner with around 70-80 panchayats, like you said, in the community action labs. And once that is successful, we'll try to upscale it to the to the entire state, and then take it up at the national level. So this is basically for visible outcomes on political participation, and seeing some visible outcomes on some aspects like social inclusion, financial inclusion, and issues of malnourishment and education of children. So we will take up some parameters which have already been decided by Ministry of Panchayati Raj and work on that in a very systematic manner.
Seema, I just want to come back to something you said earlier about the work in terms of livelihoods and the whole of society approach. Isn't part of the effort that it's not just good enough to try and establish an enterprise, but to continue with support the whole way through? Can you talk us through what some of that support is?
Yeah, so like what we realized is that in the entrepreneurship program, there were some trainings which were being given, but in the trainings the women would come, but they would completely drop out after that. And the men would continue, and we have men who are very successfully, taking up lakhs of rupees and running good businesses. And then we were trying to understand the entire process, what happens from the beginning to the end. And we realized that women, there are a lot of structural barriers, like women are not able to access credit in their own families, and they do not have mobility, they are not able to get access to credit, to raw materials, to the markets, and they have a lot of work which is assigned to them due to their gender. I mean, child care work or care of all the family members and whatever routines in the household. So we thought we really need to have some specific practices or very different innovative practices which will help them out. So from the early stages of women who have shown some aspiration to be an entrepreneur, to have discussions with her and to find out her time use within the family, and also whatever she wants to take up as an entrepreneurial activity, and also to understand the kind of skills she has, the access to resources she has. So we have designed templates for that. Then we discussed with the family members and also ended up counseling the family members that if your wife or your partner comes and does this work, it would also benefit the entire family, and the quality of life will improve because of kind of vagaries that you have in climate also, which has impacted on the agricultural sector. And after that, after this kind of a counseling, then she is brought in for a kind of a training. So we have something called the Accelerated Entrepreneurship Development Program, which is already being run. So we actually integrated gender into it, and then did a lot of gender exercises which are eye-opening for the women entrepreneurs, because then they were able to relate to it. So usually when it's done for men, the pace is very different, and also the examples are very urbanized, so they are not able to relate to it. So we went into very specifics of examples where women feel that this is my life they are talking about, this is my journey, these are my kind of structural barriers. And then we also taught her how to develop business plans, keeping in mind all the structural barriers and seeing that the family also is with her, also teaching her how to negotiate in the family. So it's not, doesn't always have to end up in conflict. It can also be you need to understand how to negotiate in the family, in the markets, in the public spaces. So all that is also like transacted through the curriculum. And then we realized that this was working out very well, because then women were really getting inspired. So we have put together several case studies. So these are live examples where women felt that women like rural women have done this, so we can also do this. Following this,
so they become like examples that you showcase, inspiring other women,
each other. Then we realized that this is not sufficient, so we began like a virtual program where we had women entrepreneurs from across the country, and and we brought them virtually, and like
in rural areas or in other
rural areas. And then all the women from our CAL blocks, community action labs, would join in and listen to the other women. So we brought in women from different sectors. So it could be agriculture, or it could be agri-entrepreneurs, or goat rearing, or cattle rearing, or it can be anything like stitching or beauty parlor, or even very conservative onwards to non-conservative kind of different experiences.
Interesting. And so you're creating this cooperative almost, or a forum where they can all exchange ideas and what worked for them, little tricks, hacks.
So now we see that because of this kind of an inspiration, the numbers of women have increased in more than that of men. So it has become skewed in favor of women rather than men. And then we realized that now next step is of course the access of credit. So as part of their business plan, we have helped them for credit access. So some of them have gone even to take mudra loans, from the banking. Otherwise, they've been supported through financial institutions. And finally, now we have come up with a marketing module, because we realized that all of them were getting very good at what they wanted to do in different sectors. So now, but then the biggest barrier is, how do you access the markets? Because that is something which women have never experimented. So we just rolled out the
across
marketing
the
model.
world. That's the secret sauce, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yes, if your life experience is within a few square miles, then
Yeah.
thinking about a market beyond that must be very hard
difficult,
to conceptualize and then act
Yeah.
upon.
So I, like one of the best things that after 1.5 years, we have also documented these experiences. So I just met a woman whom we trained in the beginning. So she runs a cloth shop. So she comes from the minority community. So usually there is even like a barrier in terms of not only mobility, but in terms of dressing and all that. And
Right.
so she said that we never went out of the house without even asking, without went out of the shop without asking permission of the husband. And she said that now presently in the shop, she and her sister, they go out to the market and they also purchase a raw material. So they move to another state and they purchase all the raw material in bulk. So I said that, how do you then negotiate? So she said, we have developed a pattern where we go to all the bigger shops, we talk to them, we bargain, and we see the best material, and then we get that to the shop. And then we also deal with customers as professionally as possible. We are not worried that it's a man or woman. We will just talk to them irrespective of the gender of the customer. So we have learned that. And then she went on to do, now presently she has a cloths. Additionally, she started cutlery.
Oh.
So she said that, this is like, I'm going to diversify my business.
Making cutlery.
No, she is actually buying cutlery from a good location, and she is selling it.
Interesting.
So, and then she talks about profit. So the big thing she said is that, I want to have a house in my name.
Okay.
So I will, that is my aspiration, and I'm saving for that. So, and then she has got her children into a better school. So these are the kind of changes which are taking place.
And again, whole of society. You're not. It's not just the livelihood. It's education. It's financial independence and stability and agency. And is she also participating in the Gram Panchayat?
Yeah.
So it's all aspects. That's a wonderful story. That gave me goosebumps. I bet that's so gratifying when you hear stories like that. Let's talk numbers for a second before we close today, Seema. Do you have any numbers in terms of the impact and in terms of the amount of people or the villages or the blocks that these programs and what you've been doing this for 2 or 3 years with TRI? Let's talk some of the numbers.
Yeah, I am like been in TRI for the past 1.5 years. So we are actually spread across presently 36 blocks. 36 blocks would mean like we have 4 cluster level federations. So it will be like more than 1 lakh villages,
Just in a year and a half.
Yeah.
Well done. Fabulous. Last question for you. This gender work that you're doing isn't just about out in the rural communities, is it? It's also about internally with your own organization, with TRI, and trying to get other people to be ambassadors, spreading this message. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we have actually been also, like, apart from the gender intentional issues with the communities, working on also trying to sensitize our own colleagues. And we realize that it's about understanding the gender concepts and also internalizing it and putting it into practice. So internalization is very difficult in terms of anyone concerned, irrespective of the gender, and that takes a long time. But when it comes to practice, there are some things which can be easily practiced. So we see that many of our block practitioners are and also people working with the government are very younger, belong to a younger generation, and they're easily imbibing it. Maybe my generation, it was still very difficult to discuss about these issues. There was a lot of reticence, and there was an attitude of defense also, and people were not ready to talk about gender equality at all. But now I feel that the younger generation is easily imbibes. Maybe the political atmosphere has changed to that extent because of the women's movement, and lot of discussions around gender equality. across 4 or 5 decades. So we see that the younger generation easily imbibes it, and that is the results we have seen in the field. Most of it have been taken up by both young men and women.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So
Yeah.
that is very inspiring to see.
Very inspiring. And these conversations and discussions will continue, not just on gender, but on so many aspects of development, because it's all intertwined, and you can't just, there's no single silver bullet for one problem when it comes to multi-generational poverty. So gender is a huge part of it, and a huge part of the work that you're doing at TRI. So Seema, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom, and good luck with the next year and a half. Thank you for watching.